What's going on? Vincent Rapisardi, BigBlueUnbiased.com. I have not done a YouTube video in a few weeks, but I want to talk about two things that I've tweeted about, but I just haven't put on YouTube. One of those topics is about a quote from an anonymous former Giants player. Now, this quote wasn't crazy. It wasn't a big rumor or calling out a coach or calling out a player. It was actually a very normal and average quote, nothing that would ever draw a headline. But I find it interesting how this former Giants player, for such an average quote, had to go anonymous, off the record. His name wasn't used in the article. Why? Something I want to talk about. I also want to get into Pro Football Focus and their top 50 player list. They recently left Saquon Barkley off that list. And fair enough if they don't think Saquon Barkley is a top 50 NFL player. But Nick Chubb, fellow running back Nick Chubb, was number 27 on that list. So it then kind of creates the debate. How is Nick Chubb the 27th best player in football and Saquon Barkley's not even a top 50 player in football? So that's the first topic I want to talk about here. So I've had this debate so many times on Twitter. Analytics versus film, what's more important? They both have their value, right? They're both important. I think film is incredibly important when you want to go back, look at a game, look at a specific play, and you want to look at kind of the decision making of a player on that play and see, what they did well or what they can improve on. When it comes to broad perspective, overall evaluation of a player, I like looking at analytics, because unless you watch every single play and you watch film, right, and you watch exactly how that player performed on that play, it's tough to make an overall judgment on how good that player is just by watching film, in my opinion. I think analytics gives a more broad perspective and a better perspective, a more accurate perspective, especially if you really dive deep into the analytics, and there's many available. And this is the issue that I have found with Pro Football Focus, is their player grades, they're very subjective. Their player grades are dependent on big-time throws, which is subjective, right? What is a big-time throw? A big-time throw to me might be a 50-yard pass down the field. A big-time throw to somebody else may be a game-winning touchdown pass, right? Whatever it might be, it's all subjective. It depends on what you think a big-time throw is. Or turnover-worthy play. Well, what does that mean? Is a throw into a tight window that's completed, is that a negative play in Pro Football Focus? Is that a turnover-worthy play even though it was completed? That might be, in my opinion, that might be a great throw. Being able to fit it in between defenders and completing a pass. So it's kind of subjective, right? And their top 50 player list isn't completely based on player grades, but they do make player grades, and it causes a lot of controversy because player grades are basically what people are watching and then subjectively deciding is good or bad. Whereas analytics doesn't care. There's no subjective nature to analytics. It's subjective. They're just facts. They're stats. So let's look at the stats. Let's look at the analytics when we compare Nick Chubb to Saquon Barkley. So looking at the overall pure running back standpoint, right? In terms of just straight up handing the ball off and running it, Nick Chubb is slightly better than Saquon Barkley. Both entered the league in 2018, so they've both played 2 NFL seasons. Nick Chubb, he's averaging 5.1 yards per carry. Saquon Barkley's averaging 4.8 yards per carry, so both very good. It's not as though Saquon Barkley's averaging 4.1 yards per carry. He's still averaging 4.8 yards per carry. That's very effective, right? That's a really good running back in the NFL. When we look at yards after contact per carry, Nick Chubb was 3rd in the league as a rookie, and he was 3rd in the league last year. Saquon Barkley as a rookie was 4th in the league, and last year he was 6th. So in terms of overall pure running back, Nick Chubb has the slight edge statistically, but it's not the Grand Canyon. They're both very good running backs, arguably top 5 running backs in the NFL. Some of the best, 2 of the best running backs in the NFL. Very good, right? Elite level ball carriers. What's interesting, though, is that Pro Football Focus, their reasoning for Nick Chubb being this high on their list, or being on their list in general, is the fact that, and I'm quoting them, Chubb is a dynamic playmaker with the ball in his hands, end quote. So that's the reasoning, right? That Nick Chubb, the reason he is number 27 on their list, it's because he's dynamic with the ball in his hands. Okay, so let's use stats to prove the true dynamic ability of a player when they have the ball in their hands. So touches is the ultimate way to judge a running back, right? Because running backs not only run the football and or given the football on a handoff, but they also catch the football as a receiver, right? Quarterbacks throw them the football. That's the modern day NFL, where running backs play a major role in the passing game. They catch a lot of passes these days. Well, in terms of yards per touch, which takes into account both running the football, right, handoff, and catching the football, getting passes thrown to them, Saquon Barkley has a higher yards per touch over the course of his career than Nick Chubb. Barkley averages 5.6 yards per touch. Chubb averages 5.3 yards per touch. So when we judge a playmaker, what's the ultimate way to judge a playmaker, right? How many yards they can get every time they touch the football. And Barkley not only has a higher yards per touch than Chubb, but he's also done it on more attempts. So that goes to show he can consistently be a game changer with a higher workload. So when I just look at numbers, this is why I love analytics, because they're just facts, right? They're just stats. Another interesting aspect to this argument is the fact that Saquon Barkley has been targeted 194 times as a receiver in his career so far, averaging 6 yards per target. Nick Chubb's only been targeted 78 times as a receiver in his career, averaging 5.5 yards per target. So Saquon Barkley not only has averaged a higher yards per target, not only is he the better receiver, but he's done it in a much larger sample size. So it's interesting that when talking about Nick Chubb as this dynamic playmaker, clearly they're saying that he's a better playmaker than Saquon Barkley. It's kind of odd in 2020, where throwing the football is so valuable, that being a good receiving running back wouldn't carry a tremendous amount of weight when judging that player as a playmaker. Another thing that I want to talk about is the New York Post article. So there was a quote from an anonymous former Giants player. Anonymous. And you would think, again, like this quote, wow, this must be like a crazy rumor, right? Well, no, actually, it wasn't at all. Here was the quote. I don't know why people have so much hate for Dave. He got a franchise quarterback, a generational running back, a top cornerstone franchise left tackle in 3 straight drafts, and he didn't give up a single draft pick to get any of them. There's not a lot of franchises that can say that. Now, there wasn't anything crazy about this quote. This former player didn't call out a former teammate or a former coach or put out a crazy rumor. I mean, this quote is so boring that I think that if it happened during the football season, nobody would even write an article about it. Nobody would even be interested in reading it. But the reason this former Giant went anonymous is because the mainstream narrative has already been created, that Dave Gettleman doesn't know what he's doing. He's clueless. And therefore, if you agree with what he does, you are clueless too. And the Twitter mob will come at you and tell you how you just don't know football. And I've seen this firsthand, because I've put out things, and when they're not mainstream opinions that everybody would agree with, I get destroyed and I get attacked. And for me, I don't care. I'm always going to say how I feel depending on what the facts tell me. I'm always going to go with what the facts tell me and be as objective and as unbiased as possible. But other people, I feel bad, because maybe they don't want to put their real opinion out there because they just don't want to get attacked by the Twitter mob. They don't want their mentions filled with hate and people who just say nasty things. And that's the problem with Twitter, is that having an actual debate really doesn't exist for the most part. And I've always said that. I said, look, if you want to have a real debate, I love it. I love debate. It's not that I love proving people wrong. I just like debate. I like you having your opinion and putting together facts and putting together an argument, and me having my opinion based on facts and putting together arguments and putting together a debate and being respectful about it. And I think that's awesome. Like I said, it's rare on Twitter. It's tough to find that. Usually people just tell you, well, you're just wrong, or they'll insult you and tell you how you're dumb and you don't know what you're talking about and you just don't know football. So it's tough to sometimes have actual debates on Twitter, and people understand that. That's why they don't want to put their real opinion out there. And they don't want to be told how crazy they are and how they don't know football. So for me, this quote, it hurt. I looked at this and I'm like, this isn't good. This isn't good. And I know a lot of people are probably like, okay, well, it's really not that big of a deal. I do think it's a big deal, because I do believe that people feel a little bit censored on social media. And it's not just sports. It's other things as well, where they don't feel like they can truly tell their side or give their opinion without people mocking them and telling them how wrong and terrible and dumb that they truly are. That's not the kind of Twitter that I want. If it were up to me, a Twitter that's open-minded, that accepts all opinions, and doesn't tell someone that they're stupid because you disagree with them. So this quote, again, I don't even know if I would notice it during the season. If there were an article that were like this, I probably wouldn't even notice it. There would be so many things going on. But seeing that this former Giant had to go anonymous to say something as basic as, I don't understand why Dave Gettleman gets so much hate. It just goes to show the Twitter mob, the control that the Twitter mob and the social media mob truly has on people, to the point where they can't even compliment a guy without kind of hiding, right? Trying to remain anonymous. And I don't blame that person, not at all, because I've seen how people get attacked on social media. I've seen it firsthand. I mean, Eli Manning wasn't a good player in his last 3 to 4 years in the NFL. It's obvious. It's statistically proven. And yet, I remember one day just tweeting about it and losing 30 or 40 followers in one day just based off a tweet about Eli Manning. So I understand why people don't want to kind of create drama with their opinion. But I find it sad, too, that it has to go to that extreme, where people have to go anonymous even over something that is just so simple and just something that they feel and that they think is true. That just their opinion, right? So that's all I got. Vincent Rappisardi, BigBlueUnbiased.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Vince Rappisardi. I have a podcast, Big Blue Unbiased Podcast. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all those other platforms. And I'm available everywhere else, Facebook and whatnot. Subscribe. Would love that if you subscribe. And if you comment, if you like, would appreciate that too. Thanks again, Vincent Rappisardi, BigBlueUnbiased.com.